Now, you'll sometimes see people talking about the current global system, this global order I've been speaking about, and they will tell you that the problem is capitalism. And they are insistent on this. This is what the problem is. It's capitalism, okay? And they'll be anti-capitalism. They'll have the red fist against capitalism, anti-capitalism, And I mean, I see where these people are coming from, but they've misdiagnosed the problem. The problem is not capitalism per se. The problem is this warped version of capitalism called neoliberalism. And then you add into that global free trade and open borders, and all this together, these three factors together, creates this Ponzi economy and the Ponzi economic system. I'm going to talk to you about that now. So what is this Ponzi economy? Well, the Ponzi economic system this has become the norm. This has become the standard political economic paradigm in the West, in the first world. And it requires, like I said, ever more people coming in. That has a depressive effect on wages, provides a bigger supply of people, which is good for employers because they have more people to choose from, they can offer less in wages. It's good for house prices and rents, they start to go up. And there's various other effects as well. It can result in social problems, it can result in crime, etc. But I spoke about those in the previous video, so I won't go on about that here. But anyway, this Ponzi economic system is extremely lucrative. It is so lucrative for our political leaders and for the various other vested interests I mentioned, the corporate guys and so on, the bankers, solicitors, etc. Because it's so lucrative, it cannot be allowed to stop. It must continue. It has to continue. So therefore, this system, it has to remain in place. This constant feeding of more and more people all the time. This is the Ponzi scheme I'm talking about. You need more and more people coming into the bottom of the pyramid each time. Those people get older. Because those people get older, you're going to need people to replace them coming in. But instead of doing what would be the sensible thing, if you cared about individual countries, which is to encourage the native people to actually have families, and rather than bringing in ever more people from outside, which can have a corrosive effect on society. It doesn't have to now, but it often does. The more and more the more diverse you make a society in general, the more you break down social cohesion, and that can have a dislocating effect on people. It can have a demoralizing effect on people, and that's something I'm going to come to now actually. How do our political leaders and our media and the various other vested interests, how do they keep the people in the dark, okay, in order to continue with this Ponzi economic system? Well, they have to demoralize the people, they have to guilt the people, okay? They have to gaslight the people, they have to give them lies, or at least exaggerations, like for instance the skills gap and labour gaps. You'll hear this coming from various business leaders, you'll hear it come from the media, from our politicians. Oh, we need 100,000 more people in such an industry. Oh, we need 50,000 more people in this industry. We need 80,000 more builders. We need 90,000 more restaurant workers, etc. This kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying there isn't some basis to this, but it's certainly exaggerated. It is absolutely exaggerated. And the reason is, again, the employers, the politicians, they want a surplus of people. They want more and more people. They want too many people than what's required really. Because then once you've got a bigger pool of people, employers can offer less in wages. Okay. Again, as well, once you've got a bigger pool of people coming into your country, the impact that causes on house prices and on rents as well. So again, the various vested interests all benefit from that. They all benefit from having more people in the country, and one way of doing that is to convince the people, fool the people into thinking there's these massive skills gaps and labour shortages. In reality, there's generally very little truth to that, or at least only a small amount of truth. There may be small labour gaps, there may be small skills gaps, but it's nothing like what's portrayed in the media. And this is deliberate because this creates a pretext for getting ever more people into the country, people who are willing to work for less money. Therefore, that has a depressive effect on wages. Employers, corporations, businesses are delighted with that. Another way in which you keep up this Ponzi economic system is you instill the local people, instill the domestic population with guilt. Okay, how do you do that? You feed them with all this guilt over slavery, over colonialism, over the fact that, you know, European leaders from way back, from centuries ago, went over to parts of Africa, Asia, South America, and also North America as well, of course, and colonized, and in many cases brutalized and treated the local people desperately. And I'm not denying that for one moment. However, what's not mentioned is the fact that this was a very small amount of people. This was a tiny percentage of the population. This was the power elite. It was the elites of those days. It was the kings and queens of those days. It was the very, very top 1 or 2%. It was not the ordinary people. Okay, ordinary Europeans have no, we are in no way responsible for what a tiny percentage of European leaders and gentry and royalty did centuries ago. But that's not the narrative we get from the media. We get told we're responsible. We're responsible for the wrongs of colonialism. We're responsible for the wrongs of slavery. Okay, and slavery is another one, of course, as well. And Irish people were slaves. There was over 100,000 Irish people taken as slaves centuries ago. But do you ever hear that from the media or from academics? No. You get guys like Liam Hogan who try to downplay it, try to pretend it never happened. Okay, this is deliberate because Irish people cannot be allowed to join in with the guilt culture. We cannot be allowed to think of ourselves as victims. That's only allowed to people from other parts of the world. Generally people outside of Europe or people from non-Christian cultures. Okay, that's the way it works. You have to instill Europeans with this idea that they are responsible for all the ills of history, all the wrongs of history, colonialism, slavery, Nazism, etc. That modern day Europeans are somehow responsible for all of that. And if you kind of convince Europeans and people of European heritage around the world, in America and Australia and Canada and so on, if you can convince those people that they are bad people due to the fact that a tiny percentage of European elites indulged in some terrible things centuries ago, then you have a pretext then for allowing people to come in from outside, because you feel then you've got an obligation. You've got to pay back for all of these sins from years ago. But notice that the same rules are not applied to other cultures. Like, for instance, slavery was practiced in practically every major grouping, every major kind of race or culture around the world engaged in slavery. But only Europeans or people of European heritage are responsible, it seems. According to the media, according to the political establishment, you'll never hear about the Ottomans and all the terrible things that went on with the Ottomans, okay? You won't hear about Jews involved in the slave trade. You won't hear about black people involved in the slave trade. You won't hear about China's terrible deeds as well, or Japan, or any of these cultures. No, only Europeans, only people of European heritage are responsible. That's deliberate. That's demoralization. That's how you keep us down, and that's how you create a pretext for diversifying the societies, for making our societies more diverse, for, in a sense, and this is what we're obliged to do now, because we were involved in so much terrible things in the past, apparently, according to the media, according to this narrative, that it's only right then that we should allow people to come in from all other parts of the world, to pay them back essentially for the guilt, for the sins of our forefathers, apparently, going back in the centuries. So those are just two examples of how Western people in the West are demoralized, how they're guilted, how they're gaslighted, how they're lied to, how they're fooled by our political leaders, by our media, by the entertainment industry, and by many other sort of public figures as well. This is essential to keep this Ponzi economic scheme going. Endless economic growth. I mean, it's an insane mentality. It's an insane idea, and it's all about creating profits for those vested interests in the present. It has no concern about the future, none whatsoever. It doesn't care about the environment. It doesn't care about people. It only cares about making money. That's all it's about. So, some food for thought there, folks. That should make sense to you. If you've had to listen to the 4 videos now, hopefully you're starting to realize what's going on here. I'm an ordinary person. I'm an ordinary working person. You know, why would I make these videos? What's the point of me making these videos? Unless I've learned about what's going on, the bigger picture, what's happening, and how unjust it is. And I simply want to let people know about that. So I hope you're starting to realise now about how things work and how destructive it is for society, not just for, you know, Western society, but also other countries that see some of their best people taken away, this brain drain that goes on, which really thwarts and stymies their countries, their economies, and prevents them from rising up and becoming stronger. So it's wrong on every level. So have a think about what I've said in this video and the previous videos, and maybe you then can let other people know about these things. And my idea really is just to inform people, let people know what's happening, and from here maybe we can cause positive changes to happen.